Derivatives trading involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results.
So stressful when the world's on fire. Good God. I can't look at this, guys. Like, my strategy is you buy it and you hope that you got a good spot. Yeah, but we all think you're crazy. You don't fight this. No way. The markets are freaking out and you don't think that anything is wrong? Come back tomorrow and I'll lose it all. Should be fun.
Good morning, everybody. Man, okay, so I know that last week I was like, nah, we don't need to stream on Monday. Nothing's going to happen. But then there was this whole Ukraine thing and emergency Fed meeting. And apparently today is going to be, well, I mean, we don't know, but it sure looks set up to be an absolutely insane morning. So, yeah, I have to stream. We have to come and watch this. So let's look at the charts and see what we did over the weekend, talk about what those moves were. So here again, Thursday, CPI, Friday. Well, they kind of come back a little bit, but I don't remember, was this the possible emergency Fed meeting that kind of pushed us down? But then Ukraine and all risk off and just completely wiped out the CPI news. So I have never seen a larger informational dichotomy like battle between two opposing forces here, with Ukraine risk on one side and central bank tightening on the other side, and which side will win. Because, you know, again, come back over here to the thing. Well, not again, but I mean, I have no clue what's going on in Ukraine. We just do not have enough information to even begin to fathom what's really going on there. The Biden administration seems awfully concerned, but then like the Ukraine president is like, nah, it's fine, come over. What? Yeah, there's all these troops on. You want Biden to come over? Like, they could just shell him. That could just be the end of it. I don't get it. It's so bizarre. The whole thing is, but this is always the way things are with Russia. Like, this is the way it was with Georgia, and when they took over Donetsk or wherever it was. It's just they're really good at making everything confusing. So for us over here, that makes our job super hard. Come over to ES, you can see it really hammered markets. There is a bit of a recovery overnight, but man, they are just risk off over here. Oil skyrocketed on that Ukraine news. Like, it was big time up, and now even more in the overnight. I think that I'm missing some data in that chart there. Natural gas, gold and silver also benefited from the move. So yeah, the whole thing is just a little cray-cray. The whole thing. Oh yeah, dollar. A lot of flight to the dollar. And you can see here up above 96. Bitcoin. Well, that's interesting. So Bitcoin took a little bit of a hit on Friday. It was Friday the 11th, I believe, right? Yeah. So on the 11th, they took a little bit of a hit, I think, but there's a little jump. They said Coinbase had to like lock down or like turn things off because they got so many visits because of the Super Bowl. So I think that would be good for cryptocurrency, but that's probably very short term driver, right? Who the heck is this? Ban you. No, sir. Okay, now just know the emergency Fed meeting is supposed to be at 11:30 Eastern time, and we have a Fed speaker in 4 minutes at 8:30 Eastern time. So we might get some volatility here when Bullard starts speaking, all right? Although, given what happened last time he spoke, and it sounds like some of the other members of the Fed were very upset with him, I don't know what he's gonna. I really can't even predict what he's even. This market is just a little terrifying. And we're just gonna sit back and watch, and then maybe presents an opportunity after. Yeah. So one thing I was seeing, I was thinking about making a TikTok, but then but one, I didn't have the time over the weekend, but two, I was just like, I've been mean enough for the week stitching people and stuff. But um, there was people in the crypto sphere that were going like, well, last time that there was stuff with Russia, it didn't really impact markets. Like there was a little bit of it, but overall they were fine. And I'm like, no, that is so irresponsible to tell people. Like last time when it was Russia invaded somewhere, uh, first of all, you got to remember we we weren't sure if anything was even happening at all. We were like, you were getting reports, and we got getting conflicting reports, and Russia's like, no, we're not there, and it was just total, like it was just completely confusing, and even the American military or the information that we got out of U.S. outlets was still like they didn't really know what was going on, you know. So by the time it happened, it was like it was over, and like we weren't going to do anything, right? Whereas this time they're talking about taking over the whole of Ukraine. There's going to be an insurgency afterwards, so they're not just going to lie down and take it. Um, the whole international community is involved, and they're going to cut Russia off completely if they do this, right? Like before, it was like, oh yeah, now your guys, they aren't allowed to have money in our banks, or it was just like they didn't. It was just kind of a slap on the wrist, right? This time they're going to cut off the oil pipeline, cut them off from Swift. A very harsh economic. I mean, it's just going to decimate Russia's economy. I mean, the sanctions before kind of hurt their economy, but it wasn't like the worst. It wasn't like Iran level sanctions. This time around you could get like Iran level sanctions. So and in particular, like closing the pipeline is a huge risk. I mean, it would have a really negative impact on Europe. So and that's why I think this particular situation a little bit different, right? Does past price reflect future price? We've never been able to show that it does. No. Rather, a more accurate way of saying it is that we've been unable to find any way of predicting future price based on the current price and price history on anything other than like a super high frequency time frame that us humans are simply not able to see. And even on that point, I'm not even sure you can call those price. It's as more volume doing stuff, but that's the whole thing though, is if the market is inelastic, what the current price is doesn't really matter too much. All that matters is what the future orders that come in. I don't know about that one, Captain Price. Control over the pipeline if Russia and Ukraine don't export gas or whatever else oil, inflation higher because the Fed has to hike again to fight inflation, market crash, so it makes sense, market panics. But again, the treasury market, rates went down when that happened. That was seen as a deflationary um risk. I think that the risk to global economic growth from this situation is a stronger force than the risk from higher oil prices. You get what I mean? And on the same side, all the Federal Reserve has to do is talk about starting to raise interest rates and the markets start falling apart. You know? Maybe the more this goes along, the less and less likely it seems like that they'll really have to do like five increases this year, right? But it all depends. Generally speaking, if the bonds are going down here, okay. So is Boston speaking? No, I don't know. Bullard's going to be on CNBC. Oh. But if rates continue to go up, that would generally be a good thing, because in order for us to justify the really big increases. Okay, Bullard is doubling down on 4 rate increases by July. So generally overall that looked bearish for treasuries, but only slightly so, and the reaction was not crazy. It looks like probably a lot of guys like myself just kind of hands off. No, if for rates to continue going up, that means that the economy has to be continuing to grow, right? Like if we were to enter a recession in the first quarter of this year, then all those other rate increases aren't coming, right? Oh, he says, I think my plan is a good one and I need to convince colleagues. So, oh man, I don't know what you do in this situation. You just go along with it? Mm, I don't know. Yeah. What are my thoughts over the meeting? So I'm a little confused on the meeting, to be honest with you. So there is a meeting at 11:30 today to talk about rates, I guess. And there was, man, the 5-year took a dive there for sure off of Bullard speaking. I think that markets kind of expected Bullard to walk his comments back, but he didn't. But the thing is they haven't done the meeting. I don't know. It sounded like the other Fed members were upset with him. Maybe they haven't spoken to him yet. I'm not so sure that it's wise for me to do something right now off of this move, even though it is moving them. I might end up regretting that in the long run, because we could have some big moves here, but I'm still a little risk off. Anyways, the meeting happens at 11:30. I don't know what's going to happen, because you got the Ukraine thing too, right? So do they come in and say, well, we can just do it in March, it's fine? I don't know. I kind of feel, I don't feel like the inflation report that we had is really like so alarming that we have to do something right now. You know what I mean? Like why can't we just wait until March? Because I don't a lot of the effects and that interest rates have that will cool inflation off take a long time to come into the market anyways. So like what's another 2 weeks? You know? Well, I guess it's not 2 weeks. It's really like another month, huh? I don't know. But here again, the headline is Bullard doubles down on 100 basis points increase by July is his preference, and expounding on it a little bit by saying that's his plan. He thinks it's a good plan, and he's going to have to convince his colleagues. So it doesn't sound like he's talked to anybody about this. Monday, if we open 0%, I'm neutral. If we open gap down, I don't want to see downturns. If I'm going long, I usually wait. Nah. The headlines are going to drive us, folks. And it's probably going to be a long, long morning, right? So we have this right now. But again, at 9:30, we're going to get more. And would not I would not forget about the Ukraine thing, because we'll probably get more headlines about Ukraine. Like the White House is going to wake up and probably say something about it. Okay. So the market is very much increased their expectations for the March meeting. From the marketeer here, they're at 65% chance of a double rate hike. Yeah. But you can see it was a little bearish. A lot of that, well, not a lot of that. Actually, I would say most of that happened right after. But they were at 075. We were up here, and then Bullard started speaking. So like compared to the significance of what he said, it's a relatively mild move. Right? Because when he started speaking last time, it was like 16 ticks, you know? So oh my gosh. I love you more than North Koreans are forced to love Kim Jong-un. Oh my god. Now, the Fed has not said that they're going to do an intermarket hike yet. Yeah. There's a Bullard says, I have been trying to persuade the committee to go faster since last July. So, that's another thing that I should have mentioned that I just kind of neglected to say is that Bullard is the hawk. He's the conservative. He's been concerned about inflation, right? So I don't know if what he wants is really what's going to end up happening, right? Like if he wants to do an inter-rate hike, I mean, he'll probably vote yes. Let's do it today, right? But I don't think that the rest of the committee agrees with him on that. Increase the interest rate would have been affecting the market double and recession incoming. Yeah. I mean, so here's another thing, and this one is very difficult for me to game out, but I'm sure that somebody can go and do the math because interest rates affect different people differently, right? There are sectors of the economy that benefit from rising interest rates. I think that the problem that we have right now is that the market is used to having low interest rates for so long that probably the number of companies that are geared towards and take advantage of higher interest rates best, there are probably less of them. But because everything has been like so short-term focused and growth focused Well, especially since the pandemic, but even really going back the last like 15 years. So, you know, but higher interest rates doesn't necessarily have to be the end of the world. In fact, I remember back to the early days of this stream and back when, they first started raising interest rates the first time. And it was kind of like them not raising the interest rate kind of held the rest of the market back to some extent. It was like they needed to get that behind them first. It was holding back investment essentially. And so after you saw that first rate increase, like there was a pretty good growth after that for that first one. But then they went like one too far on December of 2019. That was a mess. That was a big mess, but they went too fast. I think they should have started faster. They should have started earlier, rose slower, backed off in December. Wouldn't have mattered because we would have still have had the pandemic, and then they would have reduced interest rates, right? And then here, I think that Bostic is right. I think that they should have been increasing interest rates or rolling off the balance sheet last summer. They should have said, oh, okay, Delta wave is already cresting. It's not a big deal. We're going to need to raise interest rates. They should have done it. Yeah. It depends on how big, but a 50 basis point. I'm just saying it's not the end of the world. Like everybody's saying that if the Federal Reserve raises interest rates at all, we're gonna go into a recession, and that's just not the way it works. We should put you on the Fed. I'm probably not qualified enough to ever be on the Fed. I'd have to go back to school. I'd have to go back to school and rededicate my life to being a central banker to be on the Fed board. But hey, maybe they could hire me to be a quant. That would be cool. Hey, Federal Reserve, if you're listening, you want me to work for you. I'm a pretty good programmer. Whatever it is, you do the math stuff. I'll do the programming. I understand the math stuff pretty well, but I'm not necessarily like good at coming up with the math formulas. So if you want to work together, Federal Reserve, I'm totally open. I have a pretty good job, but I would rather work for you. So yeah. Yeah, Feds Bullard says we have a long way to go if we want to be as restrictive. So this is not the way that I anticipated this interview to go, though, because when he spoke before on Thursday, was it on Thursday? Yeah, it was on Thursday after the CPI report. There was reports coming out of Bloomberg and so forth, really pushing back on what he said. So I would have thought that he would walk back some of his comments this morning, but he's not. These guys that are in there did go to school, but they keep messing up everything. Maybe we need an honest man. And I don't listen. I don't think that the problem is that we don't have honest people in the Fed. I think that, okay, you've got to consider the environment and the way that people work, okay? Like everybody wants to manage their finances, especially when you're that old, okay? And some of the moves that they made, they don't really appear to me to be insider trading, but maybe the Federal Reserve's rules should have been different. But if you were there, you would probably do whatever was within the rules, right? So why the rules allow Federal Reserve members to trade during those windows, I'll never know. But hey, we should change the rules. But I don't think that they were like being dishonest or corrupt or anything like that in there. On the split side, they make mistakes. Like they're people. It's a board. And if I was on the board, I would probably would say if I was chairman, okay, if speculator Seth was chairman, wait, oh, he would like to see the yield curve steepen. Okay, if I was Fed chairman, we would have start rolling off the balance sheet back last summer and maybe increased rates in August, November, December. Okay, but so I maybe I would have avoided that one mistake, but I would probably make another mistake somewhere else, right? Like maybe I wouldn't have been aggressive during the coronavirus panic, and then the market wouldn't have recovered. It's just things like that. Like, and we don't know if we had gone back and redone history and we avoided the mistakes, what the situation would actually be like right now, and what other kind of mistakes we would be available for us to make, right? So can't say that I was in the Fed, then I would do it all right. That's just an awfully listen. This is how really bad stuff like communism happens, right? Because all of these people say, "Well, I'm such a good person. If I was in the position of power and I had the choice to do every little thing, then everything would be better." That's the kind of person that says that is you don't want that person in power. You know what I mean? Because they are either in denial or they have evil intentions. um, but oh man, you remember 2002, 2008? Yeah, I do too. So I'm not sure what it was about Bullard saying there. He's talking about the balance sheet. He's talking about the yield curve. I'm not quite sure what it is that is causing the market to do what it is, but it did move down a little bit. Oh, was this the big headline coming out of the Super Bowl performance is that Eminem kneeled? And they think that that's a silent nod to Colin Kaepernick's protest? If you say so. Can we talk about the Super Bowl? No, I was going to say something else about the Fed. I don't even remember what it was now. Anyways, point is they're going to make mistakes. I think one of the problems that we have is that we only look at the mistakes. We only look at the downsides that we get from the federal, because we as humans are prone to being afraid, right? Because our ancestors, if you didn't prioritize the risks and prioritize staying alive and your own economic situation, then you were just dead. There'd be famine or whatever the deal is. So our brains, we treat downside risks differently from upside risks, right? And I don't think that people properly understand the upside risks to the Federal Reserve and the good that they've done, and how much more stable and prosperous our economy has been since the Federal Reserve has been put in place. Yeah, they make mistakes, especially at the beginning. They did not know what they were doing. They made a lot of really bad decisions, right? In the beginning of the Federal Reserve. They've gotten better at it. But then what happens is a new situation will come up and we make the wrong call sometimes, right? I still really want to know how the 2019 thing would have gone, because they raised interest rates, market freaked out, they backed off, and they said this is just an intercycle rate adjustment. Okay. Well, would it really have been like if coronavirus didn't happen? Would things have started moving along just fine and they would have raised interest rates again and we would have gotten to an even higher place? I really wish that we could, because I think that would have been a really important thing to have understood, But that's just the way it is like there's always going to be unusual situations. That's why it has to be a board. That's why it can't be some programmatic thing, because it needs to be people that can adjust, right? See you next time. You got to go. Oh, thank you. Thank you for stopping by and talking. Can't follow the big picture, which happens in the US. Well, get it in English, New Squawk. Really, we have 26 people watching. It's already that's quite a bit for how early it is. Usually we don't get to that point until about 7:30. What the heck is this? Now I don't even know. Hold on. Oh, I see. Okay. So there was a something else that's going on. I hesitate to say too much about it because it's something very political, but it is something that we keep an eye on. Okay. There was a story out late last week that Durham, the guy who was investigating spying on the Trump campaign and the Trump presidency, he has said he's basically put out that they literally spied on him, that Hillary Clinton operatives were spying on Trump, which is a pretty big deal if he can prove it, especially if he can tie it back to Hillary herself, right? And there are people talking about Hillary running in 2024. So that's where it could end up mattering, right? But there are some liberals on Twitter trying to say that that story is fake and that it's just a distraction from Trump flushing confidential documents, which is ridiculous. Not that his flushing of confidential documents was okay, but all right. So they did snap back somewhat here. I haven't heard anything more from Bullard. NFTs and Bitcoin and meme stocks is not a recovery. Yeah, well, yeah, meme stocks, they fell 40%, and it might be decades before investors get their money back on those ones. Unless, of course, we have a recession and they have to lower interest rates again. Wouldn't that be funny? Like the worst case scenario in this kind of situation. Well, I don't know if it's the worst case scenario, but the negative scenario where we create a recession and immediately have to lower interest rates again kind of ends up being a little funny, doesn't it? maybe it's just me, but to me that seems a little funny. Well, okay, but what I wanted to talk about was the Super Bowl. Did you guys watch halftime at the Super Bowl? Because you know what? Like, here's the thing. All of the singers, I think that they put on a pretty good show, or as good of a show as you could have expected. And I guess like the theme and the style of the show was okay, not my thing. I'm not really a fan of hookers shaking their butts and all that sort of thing, but like it's fine, I get it. That's their thing anyways, right? But the pageantry of the Super Bowl halftime show I felt was a little lacking. Like you compare the dancing shark to what we had at this Super Bowl, I feel like it was a little, it was a little. I was whelmed. I was very whelmed. You know what I mean? What matters is producing value in this recovery. Well, I wouldn't say that it didn't produce none of that, but it certainly created a lot of speculative nonsense. That's what short-term interest rates do, is it causes people to focus on short-term strategies. We kind of warned people at the beginning of this, didn't we? We said, hey, that means that the next 2 years should probably be pretty good for trading. And guess what? It was. And what does the lowering interest rates mean? It means people are going to have to start getting a little bit more long-term focused. It means that for us in treasuries, maybe the market returns back to this old place that I never saw nor remember, where leaning was the prominent strategy and there was a lot of mean reversion. But we'll see. We'll see. What's this? No, you don't make it look like you're going to declare war so everyone hedges and makes stats. You take the other side of the trade and don't go to war yet. No, but that's what's he. What stops sovereign level insider trading? Like, let's say you're going to declare war. Why not make some bets beforehand and help fund the thing? I mean, what's the downside? Sanctions probably going to happen anyhow since you're starting wars and whatnot. I think that it does happen. I don't know if it happens in the United States, but I think that we have significant reason to believe that there was sovereign level insider trading on China's part during the trade war. If it wasn't China itself, it was businesses from China. Oh, there's a lot of comments on that. Let's read the comments on that. I mean, the obvious implication here is come in, say that you're going to go to war, cause the markets to go into a tizzy, and reverse the move that we had from treasuries and use that to give yourself a second opportunity to go long interest rates. Yeah. Does that mean if that's what it is, then we should just be going long 1990, right? No, short selling will never get banned because it's necessary for liquidity's sake. I also think that if there is shenanigans going on, it's not around crypto, it's around interest rates. But that wouldn't be it wouldn't be illegal. It would be immoral if you, the president, or some senator was leaking information to companies on war. I think that would be a little immoral. Because if it's something that is a secret because of national security reasons, and then you're leaking it for profit, that's a problem, right? Matt Burry, for example, buying gold. Oh, yeah, okay. So somebody has been buying gold all last week. That could have been, maybe they were anticipating something like this. I'm done being an expert in vaccines this week. I'm a foreign policy specialist. It has got the picture. It's got I forget what his name is. The guy with the awkward smile. Oh, man. That is funny. Oh, I didn't catch as the Fed needs to front load tightening because inflation is accelerating. All right. Oh, I got you. The case for why should we raise interest rates 50 basis points in March? A lot of members have said they don't see a compelling case for that. Bullard is now trying to make that compelling case, which is that you have to front load it because the inflation is accelerating. And so in order to slow it down and effectively combat it, you need to do more at the beginning. Do more at the beginning to kind of scare the market and cut things off, because there's like inflation expectations, right? Like people expecting that there's going to be inflation creates more inflation. So they need to get ahead of it at the beginning so that never happens. Because if they're not strong enough now, then they'll just have to deal with it more. Inflation that could have been avoided simply by properly managing market expectations, I think is what he's trying to say there. Well, the 10-year is kind of interesting. The 10-year going sideways there. I am detecting a hint of a spread coming through here. Of course, they're all down overall for the morning, but wish that I had woken up a lot earlier today and taken, 205 short. That would have been great. Back to Twitter here. I haven't been getting updates from my news squawk. I wonder if it died off here. The demand shock that's causing global trade bottlenecks should subside in the coming months, according to the World Trade Organization's senior economist. What is that? Putin has basically accepted the text of Russia's response on security guarantees prepared by the Foreign Ministry, RIA. What does that mean? Yep. News squawk. Summary of Bullard's comments on CNBC. One could argue he was less explicit on his calls for an intermeeting action, but otherwise very little pullback from his bombshell last Thursday. Yes. Ukraine and Germany hold differing viewpoints on Nord Stream 2. I keep seeing glowing media come through here on on Twitter about the Super Bowl. I'm like, really? I didn't think it was that great. Okay. So it's certainly I don't know. Will anything ever top Katy Perry? Are any of you old enough to have seen when Michael Jackson did the Super Bowl? So I was like 5. I didn't know who Michael Jackson was, but I thought that he did a great job. Back in like 1990. I think that was 1990. Okay, what's Brannigan Bear say? When investing, you have to develop a framework. In the chart, we have gold and U.S. real rates comparing 2013's tightening cycle to today. The pattern is for gold is eerily similar. The reality is the Fed is going to begin a hiking cycle and get real rates close to zero. Gold will always battle to appreciate in rising yield environment. The argument that it is an inflation is true, but if you look at the 5-year break-even rate in the U.S., Mr. Market believes the Fed will easily slow inflation and bring it back to the 2% target, hence why gold is currently a bad hedge. I agree with him so much. At some point over the next weeks/months, gold will present a great short, assuming, of course, the Fed rate hikes will slow inflation. If inflation spirals, then yes, gold will be well above 2050 record highs before you know it. He's totally right. Gold only ends up being a good hedge if the Federal Reserve makes a mistake. And the thing that is so interesting is that the Well, I want to respond on this. The whole you sound a little bit overly pessimistic, Nasdaq killer. Like I'm not about to go and buy short leaps on the S&P 500 or anything, you know. If the FOMC member Bullard speaks, why is it not that valid? There's a good question, a Nasdaq killer, but here's what I think is going on. Number one, what he said was really reiterating what he said on Thursday. I think the market expected him to walk it back, but he did not. So I think that that kind of means that the piece of information that we got is not as significant, right? If Bullard had changed his opinion on something in the last 4 days, that would have been bigger news, right? The other problem is that they are doing an emergency meeting here at 11:30 Eastern time. So the market is probably, well, I think a lot of participants are in a kind of like wait and see mode, right? They are risk off. Well, like for me, I'm a little bit scared of trading this market. I'm certainly scared of trying to hold a swing position. Like I got back in on this thing over here, but in my little CT8, but this is a little nerve-wracking, right? And so I'm sure that a lot of funds and stuff are like that. They're saying, well, maybe we do something, but we're going to wait until we have the information. So that might mean that the treasuries might be somewhat contained until after the stream when they have the meeting, right? And then there is the risk from Ukraine because a war in Ukraine poses a very uh, a very scary deflationary risk to the global economy. Okay, it would pump up oil prices, but like that that increase in oil prices would be such a shock to the rest of the markets that it would probably really hurt economic growth. So yeah, I would not expect it to be shown in Forex Factory, but the Federal Reserve did put a note out. Let me find that for you. Here it is right here. How much is my squawk? Well, did my squawk have it on the calendar? Because it was like an emergency meeting that was put out on Friday, I don't think that most of the squawks will show it on their calendar. Financial Juice, which is $70 a month, you asked how much it was, will certainly be talking about it when it happens, and I'll be listening to hear what the result of it is as soon as possible. But yeah, that's one that I guess you just kind of have to be paying attention. But when we saw, we tagged it in the Discord, so that's where I would go to get that kind of stuff because we were on top of it. Yes, Financial Juice has a text news screen here. I'll show you. So here's their screen. 702. So we go back to like when Fed Bullard was all speaking and stuff, right? Here's all the. So it shows you feed. It actually integrates with Twitter. Like there are people that are on Twitter. You can follow me, for instance, in here. I can show up on your screen. Another thing they have that's really cool. Oh, there's the filter. Is that you can come into these events and you can say, okay, oh, I can't do it on any of the news events today. You can come in and you can set an alert so that when the actual is, whether it's higher or lower than expected, and you can set a range for yourself, it will just make a noise. So you can just sit and wait for the noise that you can hear. So kind of a nice feature. They're doing a lot of things. They've got the price squawk thing, and they're starting to do crypto stuff, and they have like unusual news and moves in stocks stuff. Man, for whatever reason, my breakfast is not settling down. My bowels are very unhappy right now. Oh yeah, I was writing a response to Brannigan here. Wow. Zelensky reiterates that Ukraine wants to join NATO. Okay. Is the one payment? Yes, it is. That's what I have. So if you look in the video description, I have a link. So, and if you use the link, it helps the channel out. I highly recommend it because your next choice is News Squawk, formerly Ran Squawk, and it's a good service. I mean, I think that their Squawk is better. You're getting what you paid for, but it's like $500 a month or something like that. This is like $70 a month, or you can pay like, what is it, $1,000 one time and you get it for life. Totally worth it. Totally worth it. I did that. I've had it for like what, 2 years now, I think. Totally worth it. But yeah, if you do end up purchasing it, make sure you use the link. I appreciate it. It really helps the channel out. But if the 6 Dom, why would you want to see the 6 Dom? Is it moving? I don't really. Well, it looks like it's moving a little bit. The dollar has actually been surprisingly constrained here. But the DOM in, I gotta tell you, the DOM in the FX futures is a little weird. I don't know if you get as much information out of it as you do these other markets. So like the problem is that the FX futures is just there as like a kind of a side thing so that people can hedge their currency risk. And so there's not a lot of outright trading in there. So I don't know if you really learn too much about what's going on from watching the flows over in the FX futures. The flows that you would really want to see are all done interbank and are kind of hidden away from you. Well, with all of the hawkish action when Bullard was speaking, the treasuries have now retreated and are back up above 126.07. And I am going to take a quick break, all right? Okay, cool. So nothing crazy happened while I was away. Hmm. Okay, so we got another Fed speaker going on here. People are comparing January 2022 to the crypto winter of 2018. Want to know why it's not this? Actually, I think that right now seems very similar to the crypto winter of 2018. It's actually eerily similar. It's a pretty big drawdown, and there's still a lot of people trying to pump the price, but like it just doesn't seem to go. Yeah, Russia invaded when you stepped out. Thanks, Sicko. Underlying demand is fundamentally strong, says Fed Sparkin. Anyways, but I don't think that now will be nearly as bearish as 2018 was, at least not yet. If inflation comes in, or sorry, if regulation comes in, you could see a further collapse, but this market has not completely deflated the way that the 2018 market did. Hmm. So they're getting kind of hawkish because of barking again. Well, Barkin is fairly hawkish too, though, if I recall. It's pretty interesting to see how constrained the treasuries have been this session. Yeah, there. Oh, Brannigan responded to me already. Price action, defo, not reflecting inflation hedge. Agree. A lot of flow that typically goes gold has likely gone into some cryptos. Yeah, you know, when that was like the argument in the beginning of all this, I really discounted it. But I think that what I understand about markets now is that orders can have a more significant impact than you'd think. If the public all of the sudden decided that they liked gold, then gold and silver could skyrocket because the supply there is just not. I mean, in the long run, it's somewhat flexible, but in the short run, the public would just run them over, and it would get so expensive so fast. You could create a real bubble there really quickly. It's just that the public is not interested in it. It's normally like everybody's all conspiracy theory, and so people talking about it online, and so you go and you buy gold. But that group of people have been going to crypto. And so, even though I don't think that the big guys and all that are really playing it that way, I think that they're not necessarily interested in doing it as an inflation hedge. It kind of looks to me like the market thinks that inflation really is going to be kept under control. But the retail side of it has a larger impact than I originally understood. Can't wait for the. Well, did you hear that Netflix is making a series about Razzle Khan and her husband? Because let's be honest, the Razzle Khan was the orchestrator. She's the real for the ratings. She's the star, of course, right? I get reset. I'm hoping and expecting that the high inflation won't last, says Fed's Barkin. Well, almost all of these treasury markets did get at least a tick lower, though. 4.6 billion. The whole thing is so bizarre, right? When the story first hit, and I was talking to people on TikTok about it, there was a lot of people were saying, "There's no way that these two goons could have pulled that off. That they're not sophisticated enough to do it." But after looking more into it, and the more that we learn about them, it looks to me like they were very much involved in the cryptocurrency community, and they probably had some inside looks into the exchange and so forth that may have assisted them in hacking into it. And they were, Razzle Khan is pretty hilarious, but it was really, you look at it as a regular person just trying to make content and stumble upon something that worked for them. And I think that the whole thing kind of makes sense, that it was just, I mean, she's not crazy. It's just the video wasn't well done. It was like if you had taken me 4 years ago and gave me tons of money to record videos and stuff, would they have been that great of quality? Yeah, and so it's really just like really excessive production values put on somebody that really isn't very skilled yet, right? So it seems to me like they probably were sophisticated enough to pull the hack off. But I also feel that it's just like a little microcosm of what the cryptocurrency world really is there are a lot of people that appear to be pretty intelligent and are very involved and are very sophisticated, but when you kind of pull everything back, there's really nothing there. It's just a bunch of hype. The economic activity, they basically killed Bitcoin's opportunity to really become like a real monetary system, right? When they limited the block size. Babylon B, how to tell satire from disinformation. But anyways, Netflix is planning on making a documentary about it. Good morning, Lucas. By the way, just to reiterate, I said I wasn't going to stream today. I don't know. It hasn't enough happened to have justified me streaming instead of working on a video. Well, I'll probably work on the video this weekend. It'll probably be fine. Or we could take a day off later this week, like maybe this Friday. Wait, what do we got going on this week? But anyways, because of all of the market activity that we're getting, Ukraine and the emergency rate hike thing and everything, I wanted to be here checking on things. We got existing home sales and CB leading index on Friday. I don't know. Tomorrow we got PPI though. That one's important, so we'll definitely be here tomorrow. Looking to take a day off to record the Inelastic Markets video, but not happening yet. It's usually the people least expected. Well, like the thing is, Siku, is that everybody else, okay, like of course people will show their displeasure, like angst about it and everything. Oh, that's so awful that they would do that, and they screwed us all out of our cryptocurrency, and yeah, you know. But the reality is that every crypto bro wishes that they were them. They, even if they get caught, you know, depending on how big of a sentence it is. Like if they go to jail for like 3 or 4 years, you know, and then they come back out and they'll be just like the Wolf of Wall Street, right? Every crypto bro wishes they were them. Like I said, it's a microcosm of the cryptocurrency world. Like that's what it is. Do you want to invest in that? Have at it. You probably make money. No, and I'm not saying Netflix should do something like Netflix has already announced that a series is in production. that quick, right? Them being Razzle Khan and Ilya, who hacked Bitfinex. The Bitfinex hackers. Iceberg at 126.020. That would at least save the stock. Squawk is saying something. The Netflix stock is really weird to me. Here's what's weird to me about Netflix. It continues to be treated like a growth stock when it's like everybody that I know has a Netflix subscription. Like who doesn't have a Netflix subscription that wants one? You know, there's not very many people out there that like don't know anything about Netflix, and so I don't understand why it was being treated like a growth stock, and like the expectations that that stockholders had for the future subscriber growth was always a little silly. So seeing Netflix go the way that it did, I thought was kind of funny, but you know, we're in a pretty crazy speculative market, and that's probably a big part of it, right? You don't have Netflix thing. When do we have the emergency meeting? Is at 11:30 Eastern time, so it'll be after the stream. Was Netflix that kind of started? Yeah, it's true. It was Netflix that kind of started the downturn. Well, because again, well, not again, but This market is really FANG, right? Here's what happened. I mean, I watched this happen. Okay. I remember at the beginning of 2008, Google and Apple being a big deal, right? And then after the Eurozone crisis, when these certain investors started saying, hey, here's this Google, Netflix, Apple, what were the other one? Amazon, Facebook, right? That was their portfolio, and that was like, this was really good. And what happened was everybody's like, oh yeah, those are really good, let's all buy those. And it became so popular that it basically became a dominant factor of the index, right? But there's a problem. There are two elements in that FANG that are not very good stocks, in my opinion: Netflix and Facebook. Both of these are already past their peak. The peak users in Facebook, it's already happened. People don't necessarily enjoy engaging in the way that Facebook does. Facebook very much moved away from what their original use case was to become more of a generalized social media platform. And in doing so, they very much ruined why people were going to the website in the first place. Well, the two reasons, because the first thing was to keep track of family and friends and seeing what they were doing in their lives. And the second thing was easier promotion of local events. But Facebook wanted to be more like Twitter. So, adding the status updates, that was great. But like the way that they changed their algorithm and everything to be more like Twitter was not very great. And that's why you're seeing Facebook go the way that it is. And then Netflix is a great, I don't have anything against them, but they are spending a lot on content. The content that they've made hasn't been very good, so they haven't spent that money very well. And it continues to get more and more expensive, and everybody else is starting a streaming service, and everybody already basically has Netflix. So FANG is no more in my mind. It's Facebook, Apple, and Amazon. And to be quite frank with you, I'm not a huge fan of Apple either. I think that Apple is at the price that it is because it's the most popular stock and not necessarily on the strength of their products anymore. But that can always change very quickly. Kind of changes from quarter to quarter, but like the iPhone's not very good anymore. So because those were such a dominant part of the index, yeah, any one of them takes the fall, the whole market goes with them. If that basket was really priced according to what fundamentals say that they should be, the market would be in big trouble. Because essentially you've had this huge sum of money gone into the markets chasing after growth, and they just put it wherever they could. It was proven to me how over manipulated all these markets are. Altcoins don't move without Bitcoin, and Bitcoin selling off tick for tick with equities proves that this is all controlled by one big algo. Well, so somebody asked me about this. I think I have to, man, I don't know which comments to respond to and which ones not to on TikTok. It's a rough thing. Somebody asked me about market making in crypto markets, which I don't really know a whole lot about, but we could talk about how market making algorithms work. Somebody made a comment that kind of rubbed me. I didn't like where they said fundamentals don't move markets. The market maker moves markets, and that's not accurate. It's not the way that it works. The algorithm has a lot of power, but the whole thing is the market maker has to avoid taking on inventory and getting caught when there's a bad piece of news that screws them over, right? But then the other one was people asked, why does Bitcoin go down with the markets? Shouldn't it go up because it's an inflation hedge? Well, the correct answer to this is probably we don't know for sure, right? We still only have a very small sampling of data to see how Bitcoin reacts compared to other assets. And if we were in a hyperinflation, or if Bitcoin was around in the 70s, how would it have performed? Would kind of be the interesting question here, right? Because there's differences between inflation today and inflation back then. But it's kind of the same thing here going on with gold, where it's like, well, gold should be going up because it's a hedge against inflation, right? But it doesn't. And then every time interest rates go up, gold gets hit. So it seems like interest rates is a larger determinant of where gold goes than inflation is. What's with that, right? Well, it seems to me that to some extent in both of these assets, there is not really a very large underlying fundamentals market for them, right? Which is to say that the number of people out there that have to react when a certain piece of news comes out to that commodity or whatever the deal is not very high. Like compared to oil, okay? If oil goes up, that affects freaking everybody, okay? There are so many people that have to hedge themselves against increasing oil prices, okay? Not the least of which the oil companies, which are one of the largest parts of the economy. Well, not the largest, but it's a pretty significant, economic sector, okay, energy. So the money that is coming into Bitcoin and coming into gold is mostly people speculating. They might be hedging themselves, but they're not hedging themselves because it's a critical part of their business and yada, 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 yada. And they have to, like literally their company wouldn't function correctly if they weren't able to have access to those markets like it is in the oil markets. No, it's just they're speculating, right? And so what ends up happening is the thing that affects the price the most in the Bitcoin is how much money is available to go into it. It really is. That's its nature anyways as a deflationary asset, right? The UK Foreign Minister Truss says Russia could invade at any moment. I didn't hear that on the news squawk, but it does look like maybe the S&P 500 is reacting to that a little bit. The treasuries are coming back a little bit. Uzi says it's annoying. I kind of feel like I want to be long interest rates, but the whole watching the way the Ukraine thing went out on Friday is kind of like, maybe not. Why would Russia? Dude, don't ask me. That whole thing doesn't make any sense. No, let me finish the thought on the cryptocurrency thing, right? The amount of money available out there is the biggest thing that moves cryptocurrencies. So when the interest rates are low and the Federal Reserve is pumping a lot of money into the economy, a lot of that money finds its way into cryptocurrencies, and that's why it goes up. And it's the same thing with stocks. A lot of that money finds its way into stocks, and that's why. So the reason that cryptocurrencies and stocks are moving together with such high correlation right now is because the money flows from easy money policy is such a strong component right now. When you get into a tighter interest rate environment, I think that you will probably get into a different world where the things that move cryptocurrencies are different from the things that move stocks. The things that will move stocks will be things that will, change improvements or declines in economic conditions that will affect the profitability of companies, whereas cryptocurrencies will probably be more affected by the propensity, of the public to invest in it, which will continue to go in cycles, but at some point I think will peak. I don't know if they peaked this cycle, but I sure feel like over the past year that I've heard a lot about cryptocurrency stuff, more than I ever cared to, right? So we'll see. At the moment, though, the Bitcoin market kind of isn't taking it lying down, right? So we'll see. If we see, there are some really big downside risks in Bitcoin, but short term it still kind of looks positive, right? Okay. Now, what is the whole thing with Ukraine? I don't know. Because the thing is why is it that the Biden administration, it continues to say that Russia could invade any day now, And Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, is like, no, it's fine. Come over here and look, and I'm sure you'll be pleasantly surprised and everything will be great. Because if I was Joe Biden, I'd be sitting there like, okay, yeah, why should I come into Ukraine when there are literally thousands of troops sitting on the border, and I think that an invasion could come any day, and just me landing there could potentially, result in a artillery strike that kills me. I don't know if I would do it. But we can guess. But there's the thing, is it's entirely speculative. We do not have enough information to even begin fathoming what kind of a trade we should take off of this is the point. But we can kind of try to game it out so that when information does come, we might be more prepared to handle it. Okay, the treasuries are starting to take a leg lower. And it looks like they might try and push Friday's lows now. It might have been more, taking it at 2% right there would have been worth it. But okay, so the first thing that I think is going on that's really important is that the way the Biden administration has decided to take on Russia is with informational transparency. So essentially, they think that if they receive correspondence intel on what Russia is planning on doing, that if they reveal it to the public, that it will hamper the Russians' plans. And so that's probably what's going on here in this case with the Biden administration. A lot of people are saying that the deep state is making it up because they want to go to war. I don't think that makes a whole lot of sense. I'm only seeing Russian actors try and push that sort of a thing. So, yeah, I don't think that one is probably what it is. Okay, but something that you might see happen though is Russia could intentionally leak that they're going to attack Ukraine, and the Biden administration gets that information and they know that that's what Biden is doing, so they expect Biden to put it out, and then the whole week goes by and Russia doesn't invade. Then what does that look like to you? Because my interpretation of that is going to be, I can't trust what the Biden administration says about when Russia is going to attack, because there are either trying to push for war, like the conspiracy theory says, or they've just been misinformed or the intel is bad, right? So now for Zelensky, why would he say that nothing's going on? Well, one scenario is that really nothing is going on, and he knows that it's safe. But the other situation is maybe he is just trying to prevent foreign investment from leaving the country, and he doesn't really know. So again, that's called disinformation. They reveal info that isn't even true and then call it transparency. No, I mean, okay, but there was a coup in 2013/2014. Yeah, so thinking back on the Ukrainian revolution in 2014 is again another one of those situations where the US media didn't really give. You always got to be a little suspicious when there seems like there's key details missing, right? And American media seem to leave out key pieces of information about the Ukraine, because all of us over here were just like, well, but why is this even happening? It makes no sense. And of course, the Russians pushed that, the Americans made this happen. Yeah, see, Caleb will tell us what the Russians think, right? The Russians think that it was a US-backed coup. And Obama did support the people that came into power, but I've never seen any evidence to suggest that it was initiated by the Americans or anything like that. Right? Think CL will break the overnight high. Well, I mean, everything at the moment looks like they're going to go for Friday's highs and lows, right? We'll come back over here. Let's kind of look at things from a bigger picture here. Here's the 10-year. It looks like they're going to go down there and test the lows from Friday. We'll see if they bounce or not. At the moment, it kind of looks to me like the market is starting to forget about the Ukrainian news. They don't seem to think that it's going to happen. At least that's all you can assume from that price action. There wasn't anything that in particular that happened that really started driving them. I mean, there's the Fed speakers and everything, but there could be some insider trading. Somebody might know that, yes, they are going to increase rates. Who knows? We don't know. There's probably a lot of information that we don't have. We're in this situation, we're probably not as informed as we need to be to take trades, right? But we can look at what might be happening here. But Treasury looks like it's going to go for lows, right? ES, well, ES is actually quite contained, but the NQ is getting hammered a little bit here. Okay. Oil again looked poised up and looks like it's going to go for its highs. 95. So if the market is forgetting about Ukraine, it wouldn't make much sense for oil to go up here, would it? Well, but that's just a little bit of a jump there. So probably right now, what is more likely going on is the equity and oil markets are still not sure about, are probably as confused as we are about Ukraine. But the treasury market seems to be betting on rising rates here again. And perhaps it's that where you with Ukraine would not impact interest rates rising might be one thing. It could be that they know that the Federal Reserve is going to raise interest rates here in 3 hours or whenever it ends up being. The gamble trade. Well, I think that if you're going to take a gamble trade, that it's go long at 2% in the 10-year yield. The big guy got to look out for his 10%. Well, the we have recorded conversations from Victoria Newblend, but again, we know that once things started to happen that the U.S. got involved. But what you're saying is that it wouldn't have happened at all without the Americans, and I dispute that. I don't think that the evidence that we have says that the U.S. initiated the coup and that it wouldn't have happened at all without the United States. Certainly possible, but I don't have any information to suggest that. But at the same time, I'm not sure that I care. Like, there is the Ukrainians as a whole are becoming more and more. They want to be closer to the West more and more. Well, okay. What did you say? You say you never said that saying. What about all the sugar candy that Sunny? Well, the reason why I'm pushing it back against the comments that you're making is because you're trying to paint a particular picture that is very much in line with what Russians want us to believe, that I am not very confident will result in correct predictions, right? So the net result of what you're saying is that Russia's not going to invade this week. That's really the call that you're making here. Now that may well be the case because I'm awfully skeptical that they're going to attack. The whole thing just seems a little bit weird to me. But I don't think that Joe Biden is trying to drum up war and all of that. I don't think that is going to be very effective at predicting that. You know, what you're saying is just what the Russians are saying. Didn't say that you got it from Russian sources, but the Russian narrative is that Joe Biden just wants to go to war and is saying all of this stuff to try and get an excuse to go in. I think what is probably more likely is that the Russians fed them false info. Well, I didn't necessarily say that it was not true. But again, I think that you guys are trying to make a call that we don't have the information to make. He wanted that even before he was president? War with Russia? I don't know about that, man. Because a war with Russia would mean tactical nukes, right? Small scale tactical nukes is what that would lead to. and Russia has been saying that they would defend their what is the word that I'm looking for? They would defend their objectives they'd be willing to defend their objectives with nukes in a potential conflict between the US and Russia and Ukraine. So there was a little bit of a reprieve there in the treasuries. But they came back. The pressure looks pretty strong there. Hillary was kind of poking the bear, but it was really interesting, wasn't it, how Hillary seemed to be really uppity about the Ukraine thing and the Republicans were not. Huh. And then when it was Biden was running, they didn't really say anything about it, except for the whole argument that Biden had interests in Ukraine or whatever the deal was, right? Foaming at the mouth from the way he uses such hyperbole. She seemed overly concerned about Russia, didn't she? But I'm awfully concerned about the things that Russia has been doing in the world. But the thing that I'm pushing back against is the conspiracy theory. What you're really saying is, I mean, come on, you're kind of, there's kind of subtext here, but we know what you really think, right? You think that the military-industrial complex is pressuring Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton to get the United States into a new war because Afghanistan wasn't profitable anymore, and they need to make money. That's what you're really saying. And it's a conspiracy theory. And I don't think that we should base our theory on a conspiracy theory. Now, I'm in a bad situation here because since we don't have enough information to really base a trading strategy on, probably the best thing for us is to just stay out of it, right? So I wish I could come back and I could say, no, this is what's going to happen, and this is the framework and stuff that we know that we can use to predict that sort of a thing, and we could take a position on it, and then I could make money, and then I could turn around and say, haha, see, you guys were wrong. But that, unfortunately, is not the situation that we're in right now. It's not a straw man. You know that. Come on. Be honest with me. You know that that's what you're getting at. You're not saying it that way because you know that I'll call it a conspiracy theory. But I just know you well enough from seeing your comments in the stream that you are a believer in the military-industrial complex conspiracy theory. Which, I don't know, of all conspiracy theories, that's probably the one that's most likely to be true, but come on. I am one of those. I think that I am pretty good at being able to guess what you'll say. Because you notice how quickly I came back and had the response for that is because I'd been thinking about it. I know that I just know that, and it's not even necessarily you. I know that somebody on stream is going to come in, or on Reddit is going to come in and cite the military industrial complex conspiracy theory. Right? But if that's not the case, then what justification do you have for trying to say that Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden want to get into a war with Ukraine? Or rather, why is it that you're citing you're leaning towards they want to get involved in a war rather than it was just Russian disinformation? U.S. intel assesses Russian military plans include surrounding Kiev within 24 to 48 hours air and missile campaigns, according to CNN, citing officials via CNN. Do you say that the Iraq war was for oil? It's not true. It's really hard for me to sort out why the Iraq war happened, right? Because there was the State Department definitely lied about it, didn't they? But just for the oil, I don't think quite makes sense. Sources. So what is the source for Joe Biden just wants to get into a war? That is your position, right? Is that what's going on right now is that Joe Biden is would like to get into a war with Ukraine. Either he wants to get into a war with Ukraine, or he just wants to talk about getting into a war with Ukraine to distract the public from his cratering support numbers. Because here's the thing, Joe Biden talking about getting into war with Ukraine, I don't think that that's helping his poll numbers. I've seen that. I saw that one early on, but I don't really see people say that one anymore because the numbers just continue to crater. What is the purpose of NATO? The purpose of NATO was to create a defensive alliance against Russian aggression, right? Well, we could call it Soviet aggression, and then they kind of stuck around, and now they're kind of giving them a new reason. What's the purpose of Soviets putting tech? Well, my understanding or my recollection is that the United States had weapons in Europe, and so the Soviets thought that they should put them in Cuba. Right? Are these things not for war? Not necessarily. Me doing the things that make the most tactical sense for my own country's tactical security does not necessarily mean that I'm trying to make a war happen. Right? Like the question is the reason you bring that one up, right? Is, well, not the reason why you're bringing that one up, but the reason why it's talked about on the internet a lot is that they're saying, well, why is it okay for the United States to put tactical weapons in Europe, but it's not okay for the Soviets to put tactical weapons in Cuba? Well, I'll tell you why. Because one is the Americans and one is the Soviets. And if I'm an American, I want the United States to be in the best tactical solution or position that it possibly can, so that if anything ever happened, I'll be defended, but more so to kind of dissuade anybody from ever even trying something to begin with. And on the split side, I don't want them to have their weapons in a position that could possibly harm me. And it doesn't matter that it's fair. I'm only doing what is the best for me and my country. Now, the split side of it is that the United States has a very strong incentive to protect its allies in Europe against the potential Soviet invasion. And there are people like there's the Swedes and the Polish over there are both areas, and all of those small Soviet countries over there, they could all potentially be invaded by Soviet Russia. And quite frankly, if there wasn't anybody there to stop them, if they knew that the world would just stand by and do nothing, Russia would have taken all of those states a long time ago. Now, on the split side, what reason do they have to put the weapons in Cuba? Who are they trying to protect there? Cuba? I guess? It's kind of a teeny, it seems like an awful lot of, no, the reason you're putting those weapons there is to be able to attack the US. I get it. But it is kind of a little bit of a different situation, okay? from having the weapons in Europe. And my goodness, I mean, if the Russians are just going to straight up invade Ukraine and overthrow the government, then they really should have weapons. They really should have missiles over there. And then he's talking about putting thermonuclear, using tactical nukes and stuff. Ugh. I don't give a shit how Russ is supposed to feel about it. Here's how Russia is supposed to feel about that, Caleb. Russia is supposed to feel that in any kind of armed conflict with the United States, that they would get their asses completely beat, and that it's probably best to avoid doing anything that could ever possibly cause a provocation and to just play nice. That's what they're supposed to think. That's what they're supposed to think. And the whole idea with that kind of a strategy is that it kind of prevents war, because Russia would have to be stupid to want to start such a war. Quite frankly, I feel that Joe Biden bungled this. If President Trump was president right now and they were getting intel that Russia was about to attack Ukraine, I would be saying, if you attack Ukraine, we'll get involved. That's what I would say, because then they wouldn't do it. There's no way that Russia would invade Ukraine if they knew that the full brunt of the U.S. military was going to come on them. Or like if they knew that the U.S. would declare war, that would be the real, right? That, I think, would dissuade them from doing it, personally. I don't think that their interests in Ukraine are so strong that they're willing to risk the entire existence of their nation over it. Russia hasn't invaded Ukraine in 8 years, but now they are. Well, I don't know why it would be happening now. I don't know if they really are going to attack, or if this intel is really genuine. I think that we have a lot of reason to believe that it's not, and a lot of reason to believe that it is. Maybe a year from now we'll know what actually happened, and we'll be able to understand that. But if your position is that Russia is not going to invade, I mean, so here's the nice thing about this is that we'll know really quickly, right? So if your argument is, well, they haven't done it for a while, and now that means that they're still not going to. Okay, well, we'll see if they do it this week or not, because I don't really know. But let's say that they don't. Let's say that they don't. Okay, and we know that they don't. Then this is the conversation that we're going to be having next week. Was the Biden administration saying that Russia was going to attack in Ukraine simply because the Biden administration is trying to push a war hysteria for whatever reason? Or is it because Russia gave them false intel? Because it seems to me that it would make a lot of sense for Russia to come in and say, okay, guys, let's do all of our plans. And we know that the Americans can see what we're saying. So we're going to put all the multiple plans out, and we'll see which one makes it to the U.S. administration. And then we're not going to attack. And then the administration will look like warmongers, right? That sounds like a pretty plausible strategy for the Russia. That seems like exactly the sort of thing the Russians would do. So when you say, where were you talking about them pushing this war hysteria? You gonna take a bet on it, live action? Oh, I don't know about oil right now. What I'm hearing is the Americans are warmongering, ergo, it probably won't happen. And I'm saying the administration probably genuinely thinks that Russia is going to attack. I think that the U.S. administration genuinely believes that the Russians are going to attack. And so either they are going to attack or it was disinformation from the Russians. If it was disinformation from the Russians, then I wouldn't discount the possibility of, things cooling off for a week or two and then it coming back again. Do you think that the emergency meeting is going to be volatile? I think it could be, yeah. Well, that NASDAQ killer, what do you think this market is going to do if they come out and do a 25 basis point hike today? Right? Now, all of a sudden, it's going to be like, oh, they could still do a double rate hike in March, but it will be, instead of it being a hike to 50 basis points, it'll be a hike from 25 to 75 basis points, right? Where's that going to put your yields, right? Here in March, yeah, the treasury market's going to sell on that. Why would it be disinformation from the CIA? So again, you're saying that the CIA is putting this information, maybe even lying to the administration? Well, maybe not, but that is the US government making stuff up to try and stir things up. I don't see how that benefits them. Especially since it doesn't look like, it's possible that the US maybe gets militarily involved if something happens, but I don't think that they actually will. Or at least so far, it seems like Biden has been kind of saying, nah, we'll let you do it if you're actually going to do it, but we're just going to point our fingers and be really angry about it. Economic sanctions is what they're going to do, which frankly should be enough. I don't, I'm not sure that the Russians understand. If you invade Ukraine, you're gonna be in a depression. The NSA directly lied to people such as Colin Powell. Well, certain individuals did lie about it, didn't they? But that doesn't mean that that's what's happening in this instance. Like, again, you're trying to make a heuristic here. This is hate to say it. I know you're gonna hate me saying it, but this is conspiracy theory logic again. Because the CIA did it in the past, they must be doing it in this particular instance. We don't have any evidence to suggest that. And of course, if that's what they were doing, we wouldn't have any evidence to support that. So how are we supposed to make a decision based on that? We can't. You say wrong. Well, bet money on it then. Go and bet money. Right? Wouldn't the correct move to do in this instance to sell the S&P 500 because one way or another they're going to push until they get their war? Or go and buy defense stocks? Go buy NOC or whatever it's called, Northrop Grumman. That would be the call if you really know. Go put money on it. I'll sit here and wait to see what happens. No, it's not a sweeping generalization. I like to make decisions based on real information that we have. And anytime that I can find a situation where I have information, I know something about that situation that allows me to see that piece of news with more insight than the rest of the market does, and I can take a trade off of it. That's what I want to look for. That's what I'm looking for. But I actually have to have better information, right? That the CIA or somebody in the United States government really wants the United States to get involved in a war with Ukraine. Well, so first of all, I think that we have a couple of pieces of information that kind of suggest that that's not the case. Primarily being that it doesn't look like the US is going to get involved there. They're just going to do economic sanctions. So what does the CIA benefit from Russia invading Ukraine and then putting economic sanctions on Russia and creating a world recession? That doesn't make much sense to me. Maybe they don't think of it that way, but that's maybe the one piece of information that I have that I could maybe use to possibly give me an edge, but I don't think that it's enough to put money on. It's not enough to get money on. What comment that they had plans such as blowing up bombs in Miami? Yeah, but they didn't do that one. Those another thing that you should understand about that sort of a thing. I've definitely seen this sort of thing as government is you want to go in and put like every possibility out on the table, and some of those possibilities might be unethical, but you still have to do the analysis on them. So just because the CIA had documents about doing that doesn't mean that it was ever seriously considered, right? It didn't say I know what the CIA is doing. I said you don't know what the CIA is doing. But you're trying to suggest that the CIA is trying to get us involved in a war in Ukraine, are you not? Your position is that it's possible. So here's again. I don't know if you're trying to turn your position into one that's not very useful, right? Okay. A useful position is the CIA is faking this evidence and that Russia has no intentions of invading Ukraine, but that the CIA is doing this to try and goad Russia into doing something so that it actually happens, right? That's, I think, the position that you're taking, right? So if on Wednesday Russia invaded Ukraine, then you would be wrong, right? Like that's the one bet that we can make, that you could make today, is you could bet that Russia will not invade Ukraine on Wednesday. Says no. Mm. If I can't say that, then what you're saying is not really very useful, is it? I am putting words in your mouth. Yeah. Yeah. Apparently, because you said that's not right. But like, okay, so here's what you're really saying. What you're really saying is I'm sharing a bunch of information, or I'm taking a position not because I think that I can make a trade off of it, but because I think it's important for people to know that the CIA can do shitty things. Is what you're, so now you're actually, it's a political thing for you. Because if we can't make a trade on whether or not Russia will invade on Wednesday, I don't really see the point of that conversation. I mean, it's an interesting conversation to have. I don't know if it's a conversation I want to have right now, when there's, the market is in this state, because really the conversation we should be having is, will they actually invade or not? You get what I mean? Wow, that was a pretty aggressive down move on that last leg here in the Treasury. We're definitely getting some decent downside. I mean, remember that we were at 080 before, so we have gone, we have gone 16 ticks now. But we still got an hour. We got an hour and stuff will happen. We'll see. Now, the other side of this, remember we talked about the meeting. If they come out and they do an inter-rate hike, then that could really upset the market. But the other scenario is that it comes out and they don't do an intermarket hike. Does that affect the market? Well, I think that there would probably be a short-term recovery at the very least. There'd probably be a short-term recovery. I don't know if they would like completely wipe out the Ukraine downside, though. In order for us to get back to like Friday's highs, overnight highs, or whatever it was, we would have to get intel that supports the Ukraine is going to get invaded this week thesis, or hypothesis. Shall we call it the Russia invades Ukraine hypothesis? No, I don't think it's a hypothesis. I think would make more sense for like an overarching hypothesis about how markets behave. Scenario. We would need to find information supportive of the Russia invades Ukraine scenario, probably to go up to highs. So from that perspective, in the treasuries, probably makes more sense to go long rates right now. Sure, would prefer to do it at 2%. Could you make money from doing it at 2.5? Probably. Because remember that we were almost to like 2.05, I think, before when things were getting really aggressive after Bostic's, or was it Bostic? I forget who it was now. Bullard. When Bullard talked last Thursday. So Well, I guess I upset Caleb enough because he didn't stop. He didn't respond to the, well, if we can't say that Russia is or isn't going to invade Ukraine on Wednesday, then what's the point? Hmm. It's someone who's, but it's not a straw man, dude. Sorry, it's not a straw man. We're only taking the logical conclusions of the narratives that you're sowing. If you just want to share certain pieces of information, like I think that you're being really disingenuous here with that. Okay, like he can't come in and say, well, yeah, but the CIA, they do shady shit all of the time, and then try and convince me that you're not trying to come in and say that the CIA is spreading misinformation to try and create a conflict. Why else would you share that piece of information in that particular context? Okay, if you don't think that that's what's actually going on, then bringing it up is pointless, right? You only bring it up because you think that it's a strong probability or a strong likelihood. But apparently you're you do not believe enough in this to actually put money on it. But don't tell me that that's not the picture that you're trying to paint, because otherwise there'd be no point in bringing it up. And that's not a straw man. I'm just going, oh, okay. If you're going to bring this up, then this is the logical conclusion of bringing that up. And here's why I don't think that it makes much sense. No, I don't think that that's correct at all. I'm saying it's more believable that the U.S. is manipulating something if they do it in 90% of the conflicts we get involved in. You're done not to consider the possibility. I don't think that it's more believable that the U.S. is manipulating something. I think that it is exponentially more likely that Russia just fed the U.S. misinformation. I think that the most likely scenarios here are that the U.S. was misled, or that Russia is really actually going to attack. It's extremely more likely. And I don't necessarily have to rely on trust in American institutions to make that argument. It just makes zero sense from the American perspective to do that. There's absolutely no benefit to them to doing that. Right? If there was a really big benefit to them to doing it, then it would maybe make more sense, right? If the US was saying, oh, there's not going to be a coup in a country that we're having problems with, then I would maybe be like, well, okay, yeah, except for that they probably are organizing a coup there because it would greatly benefit US interests, right? Which one is it? Who is them? Well, I think them was the CIA, right? My position is that it is more likely that Russians either fed the United States false information, that Russia is really, or that Russia actually is going to invade, or that Russia was going to invade but decides not to because it was leaked. Those are the three most likely scenarios. And the scenario that the CIA or Joe Biden, the scenarios that the CIA is making stuff up to try and goad the U.S. into war, or for whatever reason that they might have, that the CIA is making intel up and deceiving the president, I think is a very low possibility. And the scenario that Joe Biden is just doing this to distract Americans, I also think is a very low possibility. And the thing that I don't think you're understanding here, or that I should probably be trying to hit on more, is that the CIA or governments having done these sorts of things in the past has zero predictability as to whether or not it's happening this time. You're trying to, so this is why I was saying it's a heuristic. It's just like if you're to try and come in and say that a certain person is I don't know, they belong to some group and so they're more likely to behave in this certain way. It's like statistically that might be the case, but on an individual basis, it's almost pointless to try and use that kind of heuristic to do your decision making. You got out of the oil trade live action, right? What would be things that would have a probability of predicting what's going to happen here? Because a conspiracy theory based on that they've done it in the past, so they might be doing it today, I don't think that you will have a very good hit rate with that kind of logic, right? Here's what I think has a good hit rate, okay, is what are the objectives and incentives for the different countries to act in certain ways. Okay, so does Russia have a incentive to invade Ukraine? Yes, they do. Ukraine holds extremely significant geopolitical strategic advantage for Russia to want to keep the whole of Ukraine within their sphere of influence. And if Ukraine were to fall into Western sphere of influence, that would be extremely poor for Russia's own tactical military advantage. Okay. So Russia does have a very strong reason to want to go into Ukraine. So we have to consider that that's a strong possibility that they actually are going to invade on Wednesday, right? Does Russia have an incentive to put out false information to try and make the Biden administration look bad? Yes, they do. They very much do. And is it possible that they really were going to invade, but now that their plans have been exposed, that they back off? That's also a very strong possibility because, you know, the Russians rely very much on the disinformation and you know, people not really understanding what's going on. And if the whole thing is kind of like exposed before it happens, they kind of lose that advantage and then maybe they don't want to do it, right? So those are all scenarios that I think would make a lot of sense. Now, does it make sense for the CIA to put out false information and tell the president that there is an invasion when it's not happening? And I'm not saying that that's the scenario that you were saying, but let's just look at that one, right? Because there's a couple of possibilities on that side. What incentive? How would the CIA possibly benefit from doing that? I don't see it. I don't see how the CIA would benefit from doing that. What benefit would it have to Joe Biden to lie about Russia invading Ukraine? Is it because he thinks that would make Russia more likely to attack and create the war? Well, first of all, I don't think that Biden really has a strong incentive to get people in the war. Like, I get that people tend to be more supportive of the president when they're in a war, but with the way that this Ukraine thing has gone on, it isn't helping him. It really isn't, right? But not only that, but if you come in and you say Russia's going to do something and then they don't actually do it, what's that? That's just going to reduce your credibility, right? You can't come and throw the markets into a tizzy for, 4 days or however long it ends up being, and then just turn around and be like, oops, like it's going to hurt him. Right. That's why I say it's a lot more likely that Russia put it out as disinformation to try and make Biden look bad than it is that Biden is just lying about it. Right. Or that the CIA would do it. Right. So do you understand my argument? Why I say certain things are more likely than other certain things is because when you actually game those actions out, how do the different actors benefit from them? And I don't think that the incentives and the strategic objectives really make sense with the conspiracy theory idea that this is the CIA or whatever. Well, yeah, the CIA did. Well, okay, I don't think it was the CIA, was it? Sorry, who was it that? Let's look that up. It was an individual person, right? Details matter here quite a bit. Oh, well, there's a story about there's a story from the Washington Post would be the one I would want to read, because that's what the military reads. No, it didn't lie about I think that George Bush thought there were weapons of mass destruction there. I could be wrong about that, but But so here's another thing is that I think that George Bush, I mean, it's kind of like almost the opposite situation between Ukraine and Iraq to some extent, right? So does the United States have strategic objectives in line with invading Iraq? Yeah, they do. Having a U.S. friendly country there in the middle of the Middle East and all of the petroleum reserves, right? The U.S. has very, very strong reason to want to go to war there, right? So, see, I'm not discounting them necessarily based off of the, you should trust the institution or not. I mean, I would prefer to be able to just trust our institutions, but we know that there's at least enough shady stuff has happened in the past that they're certainly capable of lying about things like that, right? I would hope that they're not, and I'd like to tend to think that more often than not that they're honest with us, but they can do shady things. Like seems like there were people in the intelligence community that did shady things in regards to Donald Trump's presidency to undermine his presidency, for instance, right? But it just doesn't make sense in this context of the Ukraine invasion, right? And what I do see very much of is that there are Russian disinformation agents out there trying to push this line that it is the U.S. and Washington that are pushing for war, and they're trying to goad Russia into doing it. That's the Russian narrative right now. Whether you're saying it because of the Russians or not is irrelevant. That's what they're saying. And all I'm saying is doesn't make sense with what the different actors' strategic. You game theory it out, right? Yeah, it was the Colin Powell thing is the one that I think is really at issue, right? That so let's change our search back here. Let's go back. Iraq war lied, colon. Oh, will it let me read the Washington Post article? It does. They're talking about the Ari Fleischer thing. And what's his name? George Cheney. What's his first name? I forget his first name. Anyways, Cheney had I mean, everybody thought that he wanted to try and get the U.S. back into Iraq, right? It's worth recalling that the Bush administration appeared determined to attack Iraq for any number of reasons beyond suspicious weapons of mass destructions. Officials simply seized on weapons of mass destructions because they concluded that that represented the strongest case for an invasion. For bureaucratic reasons, we settled on one issue, weapons of mass destruction, because it was the one reason everybody could agree on. Yeah. There you go. That makes sense? I think I have pretty effectively countered that one. Right? Yes, they did lie, and we could have potentially predicted that they were lying by pointing out that Iraq had significant strategic importance to the United States, and that the United States had and the people involved in particular, the Republicans involved in particular, had very strong reasons to want to attack Iraq regardless. And so, yeah, it seems like Cheney and other administration officials kind of misrepresented the intelligence to Bush and Colin Powell, is I think the argument that this Washington Post article is kind of starting to paint, at least. Okay, so in the interest of providing the historical record, what was the U.S. intelligence community's record on Iraq weapons of mass destruction, and did the Bush administration hype the evidence? The short answer is that both played a role. There were serious problems in the intelligence, some of which were relegated to dissenting footnotes. But the Bush administration also chose to highlight aspects of the intelligence that helped make the administration's case while playing down the others. So they interpreted the information in the way that led to the conclusion that they wanted, rather than really looking at the data and making the correct decision, which I assume would have been to have not attacked Iraq. The clearest example of stretching the evidence concerns Saddam Hussein's link to al-Qaeda and by extension the 9/11 attacks, which were thin and non-existent, but which the Bush administration suggested were deeply suspicious. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, no. Know, however, that Ari Fleischer kept his Twitter thread confined to intelligence findings that Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. In this case, the Senate report found that remarks by administration officials generally reflected the intelligence but failed to convey substantial disagreements that existed in the intelligence community. In other words, there were people that thought that they had them and they were wrong. And they only listened to the people that thought that they had them and ignored the people that said, well, there's lots of reasons to think that they don't. Gotcha. In general, officials strongly suggested that weapons of mass destruction production was ongoing, reflecting a higher degree of certainty than the intelligence judgments themselves. PNAC, well, I don't want to get into that, but did the Bush administration seem to want to go in to begin with? I don't know. I'm kind of, would it have been better for history in the United States if we hadn't have attacked Iraq? I'm not sure. The Afghanistan was definitely a dumpster fire, right? But Iraq doesn't seem like so bad. But maybe it's too early to make that determination. I don't know if the war in Iraq was such a disaster, but that's not really the question, is it, right? It's astonishing that you read the newspaper to learn about whether the intelligence community lied about something. Well, listen, if an authoritative source about the Washington Post, which is the public, if you go to where is this called? What is the military academy called? If you go to the Army Academy and you're a first year, the other year students can stop you at any time and ask you questions from articles in the Washington Post that day. That's the newspaper that they read. That's why I read it. If that's not a good enough source on this particular thing, then one doesn't exist. Because those are the only people that would have access to that kind of information. Sorry, I meant West Point. If you go to West Point, one of the hazings is to stop them and ask questions about articles in the Washington Post. I forget where I learned that from. It was some expose about, what it's like being at West Point. But I think it had something to do with a specific individual that had gone crazy afterwards or something. I don't know. All this posturing that the U.S. does worldwide is because they're being fleeced by China. What exactly, how does it benefit the U.S. to come in and say Russia's going to attack Ukraine, and then Russia doesn't do it? Like, seriously. I don't. So what I kind of find kind of frustrating is that I've come in and I've said that incentives and strategic objectives are more effective at predicting the future. Instead of coming back and saying, okay, well, here's why it would benefit the US to do this thing or that thing. You just say, well, they've done it in the past. But you got to understand that, well, they've done it in the past is a logical fallacy. Right? It's one of the logical fallacies that is very much at the heart of most conspiracy theories. It's called pretext. Okay, so if the United States okay. The idea that the United States is going to preemptively invade Ukraine is so absolutely ridiculous that I just can't even imagine what kind of a worldview you're living in. As I think that your view of reality is and I'm not saying this to insult you. I'm saying you probably have some ideas about reality that are like really, really far off. And if I were you, I would maybe go back and do a little bit more reading about this and see where I can find why Seth thinks that's so ridiculous, but I think that it's really the case. There's the United States isn't going to do troops or missile attacks or anything of the sort against Russia. No chance in hell. Like if Russia invades Ukraine, they might not even do anything. Like, seriously. So to say that it's giving them pretext to do something, I think is just so. Well, what else would it be? What else would it be pretext for? Okay, if it's not a ground invasion and it's not air attacks, then what other options are there? Sorry. It's not a straw man. It's just those aren't the only two options, dude. What else is it pretext for? There you go. Superpowers don't fight each other. It's not going to happen. Well, okay, so let's talk about Hillary. Okay, let's try and use our framework to try and explain what Hillary was doing. Okay, is there an incentive for Hillary Clinton to invade Russia or to start a war with Russia 4 years ago? Right? No. Again, if you just come in and you warmonger, listen, I don't. A war with Russia would be bad for everybody. Okay. I don't think that there's very strong incentive to get into a war with Russia. But is there an incentive to have your political allies concerned about Russia and to be aggressive against them and push back against Russia and have more sanctions against Russia from Congress and that sort of a thing? Well, yes, there is, because we're very concerned about Russia, what Russia is doing. And so Hillary Clinton might come through and be more aggressive about it than is probably justified to try and have more aggressive action taken. And I think that that's probably the case there. So I don't know what it is about why Hillary seemed to be so obsessed. I mean, it really was kind of weird. It was like there's nothing going on there, and yet she seems to be really laser focused on that. I don't know what the case is, but there could be many reasons strategically thinking why that would be. That wouldn't necessarily mean that she was really going to start a war, right? Okay, Ukraine is not a part of NATO. Okay, so this is another one that I hear that I think is false. Ukraine will never be a part of NATO. Ukraine would like to be a part of NATO, but one of the things that is required for you to be able to join NATO is that you can't have any territorial disputes or anything like that. So as long as Russia is there in Crimea and Ukraine says that Crimea is supposed to be a part of them, they can't join NATO. Like there are, and there's more than one problem like that for Ukraine. So while Ukraine would like to become closer with the West, and yes, they would like to become a part of NATO, for them to become a part of NATO, it's probably going to be like 30 years. You know what I mean? Do you update the Fed meeting? So if you guys want to know about the Fed meeting, so the Fed meeting is at 11:30 Eastern time. So the stream will be off by then. If they do a rate hike, the treasuries will probably sell off hard. If they don't do a rate hike, there might be a little bit of a recovery and treasuries come back up, but I don't really know. And again, whichever position we have, that we kind of have to factor in risks that the Ukraine situation poses as well. I don't know when it is actually going to come out. The meeting starts at 11:30 and then we find out immediately after. So it might be another hour or two after that we hear the information. So if you don't have a news squawk, and again, I highly recommend Financial Juice, which I have a affiliate link for in the video description, that are $70 a month or $1,000 for a lifetime. And you can listen to the news squawk, and that's going to be the best way to be apprised, know immediately when they've made a decision. If you can't do that, then I would have TweetDeck open, and we have a list. I have a video about trading the news where I link that list. But you can follow Financial Juice and News Squawk and a bunch of other news squawks, and they usually post the information a few seconds afterwards on Twitter. So, and so then you can get the information on Twitter. Thank you. You to openly and honestly call out BS if you hear it. Well, it's fun. I don't know. I've never the thing that's I find so funny about this sort of thing is that I really like reading about conspiracy theories. I really like reading all of this stuff, but I always think it's all nonsense, you know? There you go. Okay, the Democrats are showering in Ukrainian money. That's why the Biden son worked and they got involved in corruption. Okay, so that you might be right, NASDAQ killer. That would be a pretty good incentive for Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden to be interested in Ukraine. I don't know if it would be a good reason for them to push for a war in Ukraine, but yes, it would be an Now, I don't see how we get from there to Joe Biden would lie about Russian invasion plans. Yeah. That's the one place where I can continue to get hung up, is that I just see absolutely no reason for the Biden administration to say what they have said. So first of all, There was a leak. You remember, there was a leak, right? The original story that we got was from 3 administration officials that had leaked it to media outlets. And then like 30 minutes later, they had a press conference. And the press conference walked it back and didn't say that there was any specific plans for an invasion this week. They just said that it could happen at any time and that they think that Russia's going to do it, which is what they had been saying for weeks, right? So 3 administration officials clearly seemed to think that it was going to happen. It seems to me that the US did get some intelligence, or they think that they have something. I just don't see any other way of explaining what happened. But the problem is that piece of information still leaves too many scenarios for us to really know if Russia is going to invade on Wednesday or not. You know? Live Action says, I think a front run on a hike might be a good bet. You could be. Yeah. Like the thing is I think that there's too much risk for me to be willing to risk my account on it. But if you have a couple $1,000s in your account and you want to put a micros on going long rates here in the hopes that you get like 2.06 or something like that, I would go for it. Shouldn't say that. That would be like me inducing you into a trade, but I like the trade. If that, that's the trade that I want to put on myself. I wish I was long at 2%. Like I said it when it happened, that's the trade that I would want to make, but I'm gonna stay out. But we'll wait until the hike. Like the thing is so on the hike thing, is it more or less likely that the Fed does an intermeeting hike? I'm not so sure. Normally I would say no, but because I don't really feel like that this situation warrants it. But I mean, why would they call a meeting otherwise? So I can't really say what's going to happen on that one. So whatever you do, just realize that it's a huge gamble. Because if it was really so obvious that they were just going to raise rates, this market would be a lot lower already. What matters is how deep Biden gets involved with the Russian invasion. Sure. If Russia does invade and the United States decides to get militarily involved, then you start to get into the scenarios where things really get crazy, right? Okay, well, guys, I think I've given you everything that I've got today, so we just got to wait and see what happens. So I'm going to leave you. I will see you tomorrow, and in the meantime, stay profitable.